tomorrow. I have 35 tomorrow. I'm Kelly Ray with the Lakes News Now. There is some disagreement between Camden County commissioners on what to do with the Macks Creek Park. The park was given to the county after the city was dissolved in 2012, as no one wanted to take possession of the park. This week, Camden County commissioners began arguing over what has happened to the park. The holding tanks and what remained of the restrooms were destroyed. Commissioner Cliff Luber says they had no choice due to safety issues.
Did not have the proper rebar in it, was not secured. It was a hazard. Our insurance company recommended that we cover the rebar that was sticking up out of the block. We met with Paul Shepard, who was on the park board at the time. They wanted the park.
However, presiding Commissioner Greg Hasty says they did have a choice, but Commissioner Luber took over and made the decision on his own and did not bring the issue before the commission.
Never put on a meeting, and then Cliff apparently went out on his own. It's my understanding that he sent some sort of text or something to Bev, but did not present the circumstances to her in accordance with what was actually going on. By his order, he had the concrete pad where the restroom could have went back on was destroyed.
And that Bev that he mentions, of course, is Commissioner Bev Thomas. Hasty adds that he is going to put the restroom issue on the agenda next week to discuss it openly among the commission and the public. Commissioner Bev Thomas was unable to comment on that issue earlier today. We did talk earlier today, you heard it in our newscast, the Macks Creek Park issue, and a couple of commissioners at odds about it. We talked to presiding Commissioner Greg Hasty. We talked to Commissioner Cliff Luber earlier today. We are going to play those interviews back during our 4:40 segment. There's two interviews, and so we're going to have enough time to do it. So we're going to push that up to our 4:40 segment this afternoon, where you can hear exactly what each of them had to say. And we were not able to talk to Bev Thomas today. She is a little bit under the weather, so hopefully we can maybe get a comment from her about this issue that's going on with the park in Macks Creek. Apparently, there were bathrooms there that were destroyed. One says they should not have been destroyed. Another says that they were not up to code. It's a case of he said. And we are going to, again, have those interviews for you a little bit later on this afternoon here on Ozarks Today. Then we're going to probably open up the phone lines. I shouldn't say probably. We will open up the phone lines because there are a lot of people that are concerned about what is going on or what is, in some cases, not going on with the park in the community of Macks Creek. So we'll get to that here in the next half hour.
Deadly earthquake rocking Afghanistan.
Closes the window for president.
I am soft-spoken. I tried to stab someone.
News Talk 1150, KRMS.
.438, 22 away from 5. The controversy over the park in Macks Creek. A little background to what is going on. Back in 2012, the citizens of Macks Creek voted to dissolve the community, so it was no longer a municipality on its own. So there were some agencies that came along, some groups that came along. They wanted, or at least they made the intention, that they wanted to take over the park, make sure it was open and operating again, and that did not happen. And ultimately, the care of the Macks Creek Park in the former municipality of Macks Creek came to be in the lap of the Camden County government. Now, the commissioners of the county are upset, kind of at each other, because of what has been apparently said, what has not been said, what has been done, what has apparently been done under the table without the proper protocols. And what is happening with the bathrooms in Macks Creek is really becoming a terrible stink. We talked with Cliff Luber and presiding Commissioner Greg Hasty thereafter about what needs to be done. The bathrooms were apparently torn down, and the holding tanks were torn down earlier this week. So we spoke with Cliff Luber first about why that was done, And here is part of that conversation that we had with Mr. Luber earlier today.
Well, let me give you a little background, Kelly, if I may. First of all, when Mr. Palmer and Mrs. Chamberlain led the effort to have the city of Macks Creek dissolved, it won in an election. And through a period of months, I went to the Southwest Fire Protection District to see if they were interested in sponsoring the park and taking it over. They were not. They didn't want the liability. I went to the Macks Creek schools. They were not interested in taking the park over because they didn't want the liability either. So it became obvious that we were going to end up with the park, the county. So at that point, I started making an effort to get the county to take the park through all of the paperwork that had needed to be done. So the park board at the time wanted the park, and we were more than willing to give them the park. They just had to be willing or able to pay the liability insurance on it. So they held a fundraiser down there. I contributed about $130 of my own money so that they had liability insurance so that they could hold their fundraiser. They come up with about $100. They were unable to even raise the money for the liability coverage. So at that point, they kind of disbanded, and the county assumed ownership of the park. And these bathrooms were started at some point in time, long before the county even had the park.
Now, when you say that,
the concrete pad did not have the proper. The county that it did not have the proper rebar in it. Was not secured. It was a hazard. Our insurance company recommended that we cover the rebar that was sticking up out of the blocks. So Mr. Palmer again started complaining that he wanted the bathrooms torn down because they looked horrible. We agreed. We met with Paul Shepard early last fall or late summer, who was on the park board at the time. They wanted the park. Never heard anything back from them, so we just went ahead and took the decision that we were just going to tear the walls down that were there, partial walls that were there, and then we just started the process of taking it out. Now, the question is over the tank, and we made it clear, Commissioner Thomas and I made it clear last year that we were not going to put bathrooms in there in the park. Now we have Climax Springs Park. There's a park that's outside the villages in Horseshoe Bend. And, here's the question. Even if we were to put bathrooms in there, who's going to maintain them, Kelly? I mean, we're in what I believe is going to be some serious financial difficulties coming up in the next couple years. And even if bathrooms were to be put in there, who's going to hire the maintenance people to go down there and maintain them, clean them, put in toilet paper, etc. And once you put in one bathroom in one park, then if the citizens in the other parts of the county decide they want bathrooms, how do you tell them no? So the decision was made between myself and Bev Thomas that we were just going to tear it all out and then fill it in, have it look nice with, come back and reseed it in the spring, and just go from there. You have a new venue less than 3 miles from the Macks Creek Park that is going to have a sports complex. They're going to have a multi-purpose field, and quite frankly, I go by there every Sunday, and there's never anybody there at the park. When the county assumed the park, I made sure that the walking track that was in serious disrepair, they had a quarter-mile walking track down there, was in serious disrepair. I had Road and Bridge go down there, reseal the walking track with chip and seal. I had Road and Bridge go down there and fix the playground equipment that we're not obligated to have there, by the way. It was pretty substantially need a repair. They went down there with their trucks. They worked on the equipment. They welded metal in some places that were in disrepair, and the park's in good shape right now. So this is nothing more. It's not a point of destroying anything. It's a point of making the park look more presentable, more safe. And here's the thing: if a small child falls on a concrete pad, county's liable. And it's an eyesore. And not only is it an eyesore, but it's also a safety issue. So we were going to clean it up, make it look nice. And Mr. Palmer hasn't bothered to contribute any of his money to the park. And, our insurance company told us that there could not be any volunteers down there working on the park. And if there were, that the county was going to have to assume the liability and pay workers' comp insurance for anybody that worked down there. So if you had a block layer go down there to build a wall, we have to pay workers' comp wages on an hourly rate of what a block layer would make. If a landscaper goes down there, Paul Shepard used to go down there and landscape. So now if Paul goes down there by our own insurance company's admission, we have to pay workers' comp insurance based on what a landscaper would make who's down there. So it's a liability, and it's a financial concern, and that is why the decision was made.
All right, let me ask you, Cliff. When I talked to Jerry earlier, he was saying it was the tanks more than the bathrooms. He was saying the tanks were destroyed. So let me rephrase this: is it the bathrooms that were taken out, or the tanks, or both?
The tank is still there. The partial walls were torn down, and the pad that was covering the tank and the bathroom, what would have been the bathroom floors, were removed.
Okay.
Again, they were not properly made. And if you go down there, you'll see tire tracks across the field. And if someone goes up there and drives across that tank and that pad and it caves in, somebody gets hurt, we're liable.
All right, now let me ask you something else. Apparently, the allegation has been made that this decision should have come down from either A, Greg, or B, the entire commissioners, and apparently Greg didn't put his stamp of approval on this, that this was just between you and Bev.
Okay.
How would you respond to that?
Here's what I answer. Mr. Hasty is abusing his position. He's the presiding commissioner. He's not the second district commissioner, nor is he the first district commissioner. By state statute, you only need 2 votes, 2 decision makers to do something, okay? And for Mr. Hasty, if he in fact decided that he was going to put bathrooms in there, it's not his district. Again, it's easy to come into office and want to promise everything to everybody, but there are financial concerns that need to be considered before any decisions are made.
Sit tight, because this conversation is not over yet. That's only one half of it. We did speak with Greg Hasty earlier today. We're going to play his comments back here in just a few minutes, but we're up against a break. It's 12 before 5.
KRMS.
4:51, 9 minutes away now from 5 o'clock. It is Ozarks Today as we roll on here on News Talk 1150, 97.5, 104.9 KRMS. Okay, we have had round 1 of the issue in Macks Creek. We heard from Commissioner Cliff Luber. We were able to speak with Presiding Commissioner Greg Hasty about the issue, what happened, what didn't happen. And here is that interview that we had with the presiding commissioner earlier today.
Well, in essence, I think what the situation is that we have essentially property that was destroyed for no particular reason.
By who? By whom?
By the order of Cliff Luber.
Okay.
His circumstances, and if you'd like to check with Lee Schumann, you can check with him. But I talked to him on Wednesday with regard to basically they were removing the block and all the stuff that with regard to the bathroom. And then Lee discussed it with me what to do with the concrete pad and everything that's there. There's some plumbing in there that Lee just simply wanted to cut off to 3 inches, tape it up, and cover it so that if it ever needed to be used in the future, it could be used in the future. My discussion with him initially was to say, well, you know what, that sounds like a smart thing to do. Let's go ahead and do that. And then I said, but I don't want to be the only one that makes a decision on this. I want to wait till the commission meeting and talk to Bev about this and just make sure that we get the commission's approval to do so. So it was never put on in a meeting, and then Cliff apparently went out on his own. It's my understanding that he sent some sort of text or something to Bev, but did not present the circumstances to her in accordance with what was actually going on. And by his order, he had that thing, basically the concrete pad where the restroom could have went back on was destroyed. And quite frankly, for no reason. It could have just simply been covered up. No big deal. If we needed to have it on later, we could have had it on later. So, and my point of view on this is, look, we've got City of Camden has had a park with playground equipment and a bathroom there for as long as I can remember. I'd say 30 years for sure. No big issue. Nothing's ever been. Maybe if there's ever been any damage, it hasn't amounted to much. And it's pretty hard to have a park with playground equipment and stuff like that if you don't have a bathroom for kids to go to the bathroom. It's just frustrating to me that it took place and destruction took place that shouldn't have taken place, quite frankly.
So this was not actually voted on by the commission per se, I guess you're saying.
That's correct. I am going to be putting a meeting on the agenda to have a hearing with regard to the bathroom at Macks Creek next week.
Okay.
So it's my understanding, I was out there today taking a look at it, and I believe that the tank itself is still salvageable. So probably what we're going to do, if we can just get to do something that makes common sense, is put that into a position where it can be preserved for what we plan to do with it in the future. And from my perspective, the idea of having a park like that, my gosh, if you go to Hatonka Park, they've got a bathroom right there. If you go to the City of Camden Park, they have a bathroom right there. If you go to State Park number 2, they have a bathroom right there. State Park number 1, they have a bathroom right there. It's impractical to me to have a park like that and not have a bathroom, particularly whenever you got the facility right there to be used. So we've now had an opportunity to actually have a discussion about this. Other than the screaming match that took place, and I'm not going to call it a screaming match because Cliff was basically screaming at me. Anyone that disagrees with him, he just tries to talk down until there's nothing left. So, pretty frustrating. I just think it was pretty disrespectful of the people in that area.
Do you feel like you're in the middle of a boxing match here? This is what happens when we have snow and ice and guests can't get into the studio. Macks Creek. This has turned into a he said, she said, he said type of situation. She said, Bev Thomas, we were not able to talk with her today because she's a little under the weather. Hopefully we can talk to her later in the week. I know we've got callers here, but we are up against a break. We have got to go to this break. Then we're going to have to get to the top of the hour. Then we're going to have to get to our news. I'm going to open up these phone lines at 5:15 today because people are lining up. They're wanting to talk about this, and we'll get to it next hour. It's 4:57.
If we win Iowa, I think we're going to win everything after that.
President Obama to announce executive action on new gun controls.
News Talk KRMS.
5:14 on a Wednesday. It's Ozarks Today. News Talk 1150, 97.5, 104.9 KRMS. Phone number 302-7000. 302-7000. We're going to take these calls in the order that we get them, so don't think that I'm just not wanting to answer or anything. We're just going to try to get this moving along, and especially considering that conversation about Macks Creek Park earlier this afternoon. So let's go to the phone lines, and caller, start us off. Good afternoon. You're on the air.
How you doing?
Good.
Someone on an interview you just had a little bit ago kind of opened up a whole new can of worms. Did I hear Mr. Palmer mentioned in that interview a few times?
Actually, you did, yes.
Yes. Did I hear Mr. Palmer's name mentioned that I hadn't contributed any money toward that park?
I believe you did.
Well, let's back up a little bit. Back several years ago when that park was established and I had an auction business and I worked at Lake Ozark General Hospital, I contributed $500 to help purchase the land at that park. So someone don't have their facts.
And I'm assuming this is Jerry Palmer that's talking with us.
Mr. Palmer.
Okay.
Yes, you have. Thank you, sir, for interviewing and using my name as Mr. That really makes me feel special. But anyway, next off about that building, the partially built building he destroyed. The money came from the Lions Club. That was a former Lions Club here, and it was a precast type of a system, and the money was donated from our former Lions Club that dissolved, and part of that money was mine, sir. Yes, I contributed to that park. Let me back up a little bit after the park was dissolved, and a bunch of us went out there and worked our tails off one Saturday afternoon cleaning that park up after our Commissioner Franken, presiding commissioner, gave us permission to do that. Let's back up again and call me a liar that I ain't contributed anything. I took my own personal tractor over there 5 times and mowed that park, used my own diesel fuel. Yes, I've contributed to that park. Sir, what have you contributed? $100 for our insurance. You volunteered, sir. And I love how he gets on there, and I. He's an I person. Yes, I. I had the road and bridge come down there. Who do you think pays the road and bridge? Us people that live in this county that pays road and bridge taxes. I didn't pay them nothing. The taxpayers of Camden County did. So yes, I have contributed, sir, to that park. How much have you?
Well, Jerry, let me ask you here. Are you still with me? Okay, yeah, I thought maybe you hung up. Let's talk about what is going on with the park from your perspective. This is the caller's time now to get in here and weigh in on what they're seeing with the park. From your perspective, Jerry, and I'm sure you're like a lot of other people that heard both interviews with Commissioner Luber and Presiding Commissioner Hasty as well. What place or what position is this park in right now?
Thanks to the man that went out and destroyed it, pretty bad condition.
Okay, and who destroyed it?
The one that gave you the 8-minute interview.
Okay. The longer interview. Okay.
Like I've told KB, I'm not going to use his name. Okay? He can get on there and use my name. He can use Mrs. Chamberlain's name. He can use Paul Shepard's name. All he wants to do. And here is my perspectives on this. Our 2 commissioners shut him off. He was going to pave 4 roads. He had promised to pave 4 roads, it is my understanding. And when they found out this was happening, he got stopped. Okay? And this right here is the way of retaliation to get even with those 2 commissioners. He's using our little community, our little park, as a revenge type status. That's all this whole thing is about. And the tank, the pad that he destroyed was a factory-made tank out of Versailles, Missouri. It was not intended to have concrete blocks laid on that in the first place. They needed to be removed and a wooden metal structure put on this. They're all over the country. It takes maybe twice a year to be pumped out, according to how much it's used. And I'm sure the people of the community would have got down in their pockets, I know I would have, and helped maintain that park. Give our park back to us. It's plain and simple.
Okay.
We want our park back. We want a park that looks good. We want a park where our kids can go enjoy it. They have a park in Camden. They have a park in Lynn Creek. They have a park in Climax Springs. They have bathrooms at them. Why can't our residents have a nice bathroom at our park?
And that's the point that I think Presiding Commissioner Hasty was making in his part of the interview. He mentioned the other parks. He mentioned the state parks, the beach number 1, beach number 2, and they all have restrooms. And why can't this have a restroom? Hey, thanks for the call. We've got to
move. Let me finish off here.
Okay, because we've got other callers.
You brought a real good point up. The reason we don't have a nice bathroom is because of that man that gave you the 8-minute interview.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
You bet, Jerry. Thanks a lot. All right, it's 5:21. We are going to go ahead and move along. We've got other callers lined up here. Good afternoon, caller. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. How are you today?
I am doing well.
Okay, well, you now have on the air Leslie Chamberlain, the other person mentioned by Cliff Luber.
Okay, welcome to the show, Leslie. What's your take on all this?
Well, I mean, I've got a lot to say about that. First of all, I'd like to point people to a Facebook page called People for Peace in Macks Creek. That particular group of people in that particular Facebook page went through a lot of things through the dissolution and what happened afterwards. At that time, I lived out there. And, in fact, my property backed up to the park, so the park was extremely important to me. First of all, we had the group of people that he made sound as if they weren't willing to pay. Look at the pictures on there. You will see picnics that we did, fundraisers that we did. You see people working in the park, making it a better place. The reason why it disbanded, I can tell you directly, is, okay, I know personally, I was tired of fighting the county. He brings up the liability insurance. That was just one item of many struggles that we went through. We had meetings. We had board meetings. We were trying to make this work. And basically what happened is we were presented by the county attorney, we were presented a lease that also had a monthly fee. We had put the proposal that we give us a lease for $1 a year, giving us the ability to put the liability insurance in our name, okay? So it was an ownership issue, not a matter of who was going to pay the bill. And when it comes down to it, the county owned it after the city disbanded, okay? That's number one. They owned it, so they can sit there and act like they weren't willing to take possession. That's a bunch of bull. Whose was it then? And another point is that park, Jerry told a good story of the history. Mm-hmm. That park is grant-based. USDA gave that park, when all of those people donated everything, gave them a grant that requires that land, that park, to remain a park. The county doesn't have any choice but for it to remain a park. So at this point, we are 3 years later. Cliff Luber did nothing. I have pictures of him at some of those picnics where he was promising the people he was going to do all these great things. I'll give him credit for talking about getting the pavement done. You know, he's asking for credit for doing his job.
Well, let me ask you, Leslie.
That pavement was required by that grant to be ADA compliant. It had to be fixed.
All right, well, let me ask you, Leslie, and maybe I missed it, but you said that there was a fee that was attached by the Camden County Commissioners to go ahead and lease the park. How much, do you remember what the dollar figure on that was?
I don't know, but I probably still have. I'm going to have to dig for it, and he just gave me the motivation to do so, because I was on that park board as well.
Because that would be an interest.
And I just shout out to Paul Shepard if he's looking. We were presented with a lease. That was just one factor in it. It took forever to get to that point.
Because that would be an interesting piece of the puzzle, because, everyone says, well, insurance, and I say everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, but there are some that say because of insurance, we couldn't keep the park going. And what I'm wondering, would it have been cheaper to have paid the lease and kept the park going? Would it have offset, what the cost of the insurance would have been?
Well, the cost of the insurance wasn't the issue. You're missing the point. The insurance was an issue. We were willing to take it on and had quotes on it.
Right.
But we didn't have ownership. You can't insure something you don't own.
That's true.
The county, that's the only reason we wanted a lease, is so we had a legal document. So that had nothing to do with the money. So we're waiting for this to be drawn up. And then, like I said, there was a monthly thing attached to it. And at that point, this park board had been beaten up by the county in politics. We were part of an election. That much is, that little piece, is one twisted part of Commissioner Luber's lies, that interview I just heard. I mean, I was just astounded. Because he's acting the part that Chris Franken was doing back then, exactly, and he was the one that was arguing with him back then. Okay, the points that Greg makes, we need our commissioners. By the time, if everybody thinks about this, one point that has been brought up is, why should everybody else in the county pay for it? First of all, I got quotes back then and divided it by the population in the county, and I tell you what, it was like 22 cents a person. How much have we paid our attorneys and commissioners and everybody to talk about all of this? We had volunteers to build the bathroom. Both banks out there were going to help donate for cornerstones. None of this is about the money, okay? So please don't let them, Kelly, tell you it was any different.
All right.
It was all about legalities.
All right. Leslie, hey, I've got to move along. We're up against a break, but thank you for calling. I appreciate it.
Thank you for bringing this to the public's attention. And like I said, People for Peace in Macks Creek.
Okay. Thanks a lot for calling in. Appreciate it. It is 5:26.